All right, Arne. Thank you for a stunning, nearly flawless interpretation. Perhaps flawless by a certain manner of thinking. You have so much consideration for the player and foresight and finesse and craft. Just speaks volumes in looking at this score. I mean, not to mention the engraving is just stand out, and the mock-up is superb, and just so many elements about this are fantastic, and I like the way that also that you you sort of split up these pages for me so that they wouldn't, you'd have more content on each screen. And as you saw in the the mock-up playback that I just had, I zoomed in on certain partial screens so that people could see them easier. Yeah, just what a fantastic effort. Now, having said all of that, I hope it won't be disappointing that I won't be spending a couple of hours looking over every possible thing, because you don't need it. Frankly, yeah, I think probably what's sufficient in this evaluation is to point out what I feel that you got really, really right. Okay, and that won't take nearly as many words as me making the case for whether or not something should be different. There are a few little details, like, right down here, the way that the first clarinet and bass clarinet hold on to pitches that might obscure the identity of the final chord as a sixth chord. Just it just kind of takes away a little bit this E above here in the flutes, and especially with but like you've dropped the clarinets down to pianissimo and so on. So I mean there aren't really big issues. It's just just a little, possible a little clouding of the final chord there in the persistence of these tones. But I really love the way that you finish it off here with a little pluck in the double basses. It's such an impressionistic gesture, very much, very wisely, I think, seeing the connection between the first flowering of Debussy's, his fame, his publications, his identity, his significance, which I'm sure had made it to Ukraine by the time Barvinsky was writing this in 1908 at age 18. So that little touch here, just gorgeous. All right, so let's focus on what really works, okay? Here you have this tremendous build up to E, and I don't know, Arne, you probably have been following these final lectures and how I am sort of analyzing them backwards. So we'll just start here with E, and then we'll jump back to D in a little while, and then back to the beginning. So I just really love the way you have this build, like, starting soft and building to fortissimo, and then having this big gesture, this big push way up to very high B here in your flutes and violins, and like you completely don't need piccolo the way that you've scored all of this. Just so nice, and just the sort of the furiousness of this, runs down and then it just shoves all the way up. It's so amazing. All right, but like our main concern with this bar is how it sets up the bar at E. So to not get completely lost in all of its cool qualities, I just really like the sort of the reversal here. Instead of non decrescendo, you drop down, mezzo piano subito and so on, piano subito, and then just push forwards to the fortissimo, and then instead of diminuendo, leaving the B note to emerge, you just like stop, and and then we have just these nice plain B octaves sitting here. The mock-up is a little strange because it like you can actually, like, not only do you hear this big oomph right here on the downbeat, you can also kind of clearly hear the horns enunciating their articulation. Maybe that's just an illusion. Maybe we're sort of hearing those same notes played by other instruments and maybe mistaking it for the articulation here. But yeah, I mean, I felt like not only could I hear this big smash here, but I could also hear the bass clarinet and horns just, carefully playing their Bs here. So what we end up here with is a triple octave for people getting used to reading bass clef, right? So, excuse me, bass clarinet in treble clef. So it's down a major ninth, right? So from C sharp, that is that would be B2, right? And then this is an octave of B3 and B4. So yeah, and here you balanced the dynamic, right? So we have pianissimo horns and piano bass clarinet. So like all together, they will have like the same dynamic force. Just so well done. Yeah, and there will be a little bit of wash from the harp. You're not telling the harpist, like you're not giving them the little damp sign, muffliato or whatever. So there'll be a little bit of wash from the harp. There'll be just as there will be some spillover from the tam tam the way you've scored it here. Now I think it's interesting that you don't put an LV tie, an incomplete tie at the end of your tam tam part. You want it to last this long, and I think that that's real important. So I'm just seeing LV ties all over the place in some of these scores, and like I think what's wrong with having a cymbal crash or a tam tam hit or anything else, and just like having a set period that you want it to sustain. That is fine, right? The player will just really gradually ease out the sound, if you want them to, right? Or if it fits the overall curve of the decay in the other parts, or they'll just stop it if there's other stuff going on. So yeah, so it's just really well done here. Now coming into the sneaking up from above, I love the way that you've planned that that your cello is going to end up on this high B rather than the B an octave below, as it is in the piano score. And of course, that's perfectly fine. That is a lot of people elected to do that. It's a good transformation if you are following on in the right way. And it's kind of cool that you start with double bass doubling from below, and then you just allow it to become its own thing, right? Piano espressivo. And then, of course, here, pianissimo, muted strings in the harmony parts, right? So, like, you really have a definite dynamic separation between the accompanying parts above and the melodic part below. I love the fact that you have these, that you have slurs. You could have slurred this too, but it's fine that you had these as separate pitches, because I feel that creeps back into the sound picture better when they're separated, with the approach that you're taking. And then, slur, 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 or sorry, note. Da, 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 da. And then finally, you give us like that tenuto, at least in the bassoon part. And then here, like I can see the advantage to going, da 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 da, like having these more firm, blocky notes, just the way everything else is set up. All right, but we'll get to that in a minute. Right here, divisi and muted, and also you have a little bit of portamento. So people might be thinking like, what, you want it to go? No, that's not it at all. So like the portamento in this context is connecting the notes with a slide, but not like it. I mean, it looks like it is happening here, but it's really happening right here. So it's like really, it is a connecting. It's like a smooth connection from the function between the different functions of the notes as harmonic points, rather than just an eternal slide. I mean, I totally get it. Yeah, in this case, like the difference between glissando and portamento, being glissando is the technique and portamento is the repositioning, right? But like I think earlier on, there's a glissando mark you use in the same context, so who knows? But this works really great. Okay, so bassoon first bassoon and cello section in octaves, and yeah, just really beautiful. And like right here, notice that Arne has got a down bow, then an up bow, right? Or actually, yeah, so it probably would be better to go down, up, down, and then up, pushing forwards, right, and then down here, just because that gives the bow the natural advantage of the crescendo here. So and then like there's a slur here where right here there needs to be recovering of the bow, right? So just like nice little craft touches like that. Yeah, just really really cool. And then here the flute's coming in to double the first violins, and there doesn't really need to be extra winds right in here because it's the picture is so clear, right? It's all it is just a little bit of extra edge and color on that top line or the top harmonies. Right, and now here you're bringing in more cushion, more of a cushion in the winds, and I like the way that it sort of creeps in here with the doloroso, which is given to all parts, crescendo in all parts, and here we can really hear da da dum bum. Especially here, like this is one place where I would slightly differ as well. I would say like if you just make the slur go to here and then make the slur go to there, then I think we hear the implied leap a little bit clearer if the flutes are tonguing on the downbeat here. But I mean that's a very tiny point. Yeah. Now I thought that this was absolutely lovely right in here. This little woodwind quintet. And the way that like once you were done with the first oboe voice, then you just allowed it to sort of fade into the first clarinet, and then continued on with just four voices, and beautifully scored as well. And it was great. In the mock-up, you could really hear what the flute would sound like, right in this register, and the way it would all balance with the other instruments. Really, really well done right in here. Now, combination. Bass clarinet, horn, and cellos. So, all right, so this really looks all over the place, doesn't it? Okay, so what is happening here is that this sounding B is actually down an octave, and it is the same B that the cello is playing. And it is also the same B that the first horn is playing. So this is a unison on they're just the same pitches as you're seeing here in tenor clef. All right, and piano espressivo. Yeah, and just really lovely the way the clarinets and bassoons come in here in harmony around it. And then here you change the melody instrument. After this, it's the oboe. Dum. And I think that this handoff is nice, right? Or trade-off, if you want to put it that way. I think that you don't need to dovetail the way that you have this scored, right? With the like returning to the same harmony as before in the lower winds, and then giving way, like the fact that the parts like let go and and just go right into this. I think that's actually works better than dovetailing, and then clarinet, and then I already talked about this a little bit, and then like little pizzicato coming in at the end. Very impressionistic. And now, as promised, back to D. So I usually start out analyzing this section by looking at the cascading octaves. Just like a little touch. I think if you're going to score your strings, staccato, the occasional tenuto here and there stuff, I think you should do the same thing with your winds right in here. I think you should give them some more punch. All right, like here, you are confusing the sound picture with this beautiful exuberance, all of these lines flowing around, and I think they are gorgeous, by the way. And I think that they totally belong to be there. I just think that like you shouldn't lose sight of the fact that the octaves, like if you're going to leave the octaves in, then you need to firm them up enough to compete with everything else that's going on. So, if there's a way that you can have your, like, instead of your harp playing this part in here, which will, you sort of hear it, but I mean, what is it really contributing to the sound picture when you have got, you got soft brass and you've got these flurries and so on? Who's paying any attention to this? Could this be used in a way that firms up some of the octaves, especially in the mid range, while you've got these other parts going on, flurrying around? Is there any bit more force in any other instrument that could be used to bulk it up slightly? It would be like my question. Yeah, so I would just say, like, there's just like I love the way that you've scored the cascading octaves, but there's just a chance that they will get, just wiped out in practice, right? Like during the rehearsal, which I certainly hope happens for this piece. I don't know if it's worth your time or if you have any possibility of getting this performed by somebody, but by golly, it should be performed, right? It's ready to go to the stands right now. But you just may find during rehearsal that, some of this may not be quite as, as punchy as you need it to be. I mean, it's so good that you're bringing in the strings here. Like, so you would think, well, like, it was just winds here, and we had a string melody right in here, and then as things started to get more complex, I brought in the strings to bulk it up. So you're saying I am bulking it up, but but you're still going to have a lot of interference from that line. So all the more reason why there should be the articulation style should match in both instruments, right? So if these are pointier, staccatos in the cascading octaves, that I think gives it more of a chance of competing against the beautiful smooth lines that are going on, which, by the way, are gorgeous, really, really nice, lovely, lovely tone painting in here. And I really love the kind of like the syncopated horns right in here, just playing. I guess we really wouldn't really call them offbeats, but playing on the 2 and the 4 of the conductor's beat, and then here you're trading off to your other horns just to give the first and second a rest. And thinking about it, them all kind of having this joint action in here and so on, and eventually getting up to A sharp and so on. Yeah, it's good. It's not bad. It's not a bad idea to give your first player a rest right in there. And just combining. Yeah, this is kind of fun to do occasionally when it's not unnecessary. One thing you should put in your score in your final revision, that this is pianissimo, right? Because it wasn't before. All right. So, getting to the melody. Actually, one little note. All right. I like the way that you add these little jolts. And then here you're guiding us, like right here, like with this little E roll in here. Yeah. I mean, that really does help the pressure here with all this stuff rolling forwards or flowing forwards. Yeah, so you've got these double basses kind of sitting on that same low F sharp. Just as long as they don't get any louder, right? Because there's always a like when you have something like this cascading downwards and so on. Just very, very easily, if double basses get any louder here, it will just really mess up what the cellos are doing right in here and the second bassoon. Yeah. It's almost a case where like you've got a couple of lower brass people or lower wind people that are kind of like not doing anything right here. If they're not doing anything else, could they be helping out the cellos a little bit? right? It's all just cellos here. Could one of your bassoonists be going bum 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 da 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 bum bum ba da da da? You know what I mean? Or even like bass clarinet, doot and doot, that kind of thing. And then right in here, doot doot doot. All right, all right. So getting back to this beautiful, intriguing score. We've got our little harmonized melody right here. It's just done in a very lovely way. A little bit of doubling here from the flute at first, or first flute at first. Yeah, but it kind of really doesn't even need that. It's nice and secure. Yeah. Yeah, and here you end your phrase in a way that it's picked up, with the trumpets pushing in here, muted trumpets pushing in here. It's picked up by the trumpet and trombones, and the overtones from the trumpets are going to fill in right where these upper strings leave off, right? So it's not so much of a clumsy paste job at all, right? It really actually, in terms of the overtones, it's actually beautifully joined together. Really nice trick, right? And then here, like muted trumpet and bassoons at octaves doing ya da da da. It's just such a gorgeous color. Yeah. And then going to trombones right here, muted trombones. Yeah, it just really, really, really nice the way that all fits together, so that you can have this. I don't know if I would really call this a Hollywood suite, but it really is just a winding up your audience, and nicely done too. All right, because here we are leading to our big Ravel chords. And, I remember saying several times, hey, maybe let your strings play octaves, and let the other instruments fill in the harmony. And indeed, that is exactly what Arne is doing here, right? And just like if you listen to the smoothness of this right in here, and of the melody, and how full of life and color it appears to be. And we got the context of the harmony from the beginning on the downbeat of the first bar of this little 4-bar section. And then trumpets coming in, adding more harmonic information, da da da, with a bit of bass trombone below, and the horns and so on, becoming more and more prominent in the harmony, the trombones and so on. So that is really filling in a lot of the overtones, right? And then here we've got all of these other positions, these flurrying winds and so on, just so nicely done. But what's really cool here is the real Prokofiev bass, bum 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 bum. If anything, I was just wondering, could you just figure out a way to keep doing that? Instead of just going to D, 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 blah, 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 you keep going on just different pitches, right? Or maybe even just D octaves, D, 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 right? But just to kind of keep that back and forth kind of chug going before you go into this right in here. So, yeah. So I think that this scoring all speaks for itself. It's there's nothing all that intriguing about it, but it's just so cleverly done, and of course all of these flurries are really nicely scored as well. Okay, so that leads us to the big climax. And what I love about it is that you haven't set it and forget it by any means. I would say that this is of all of the entries so far, including mine, I'd say that this is probably the most fertilely imaginative and intriguing and and fascinating and apt, right? I mean, even though like some people might say, well, it's just really Hollywood what you're doing here, and I mean it is. Let's be honest about it. It's like that, just building those building scales, but it fits so well. It just really especially the way the strings push up here as the as like a lot of the functions go from the brass section to the or from the heavy brass to the winds, right? It's really pushing one way, from one place to the next, especially from trumpets to higher winds. It just fits together so well, and the little suspended cymbal, and maybe tell us what mallets you want the player to use, whether like it's like soft yarn or sticks or whatever. They'll just assume sticks if you don't write anything else. Yeah. So one thing I would just mention right in here, you don't need to put a rest in here. Just because Barvinsky had a rest here to sort of recover a new direction, but then he left in another rest because of the octave melody. You don't need to do that. This isn't a piano part anymore, right? So you could just shape a different curve here. Do da 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 da. Right. So just change direction in your little motive here. And also in the fourth horn part and so on. Yeah, so what's cool about this is the maximum amount of impact with the minimum amount of ingredients. All right, it's you can get a lot of power out of the ideas if they're just scored in a way where you can really hear the colors and the functions. So that's what I like the most about this. This da da. That's a little bark right in here. I almost feel like the need for some kind of articulation at the end, like a staccato or a marcato or some kind of arf, right at the end, or an accent even. Yeah. So that works, and then back to yada da da, and here the winds take over, right, and then we've got some of this going on, bass clarinet and fourth horn and so on. And similar positions that the horns are doing from before, and the heavy brass and so on. Here you're not getting quite as loud, right? And that's great because you're leaving more space for your winds right in here. Yeah. All right, now here you're going to all down bows. So you're saying non-divisi. All right, that's all cool. And to people who are a little confused about this, so if the F double sharp is the same pitch as G natural, then it's really simple for Arne's first violins to be just playing double stops using the low fourth string, open fourth string, right? Real simple. And then these thirds and so on, these diminished fifths, that's all real easy. Yeah, and then of course non-divisi in the basses, right? Okay, so here you want all down bows. So I would just say what I would write here is non-divisi, or if you need it, but also have all is AL space TALL period. All talone is what you want. So that means all down bows, right? So just is what in a German score might say am Frosch, right, with the frog. So what you would do is just mark that al talone for the first half bar, and then just say etc. afterwards, and then the people will keep playing down bow down bow down bow down bow down bow, and just save some space, and then it would just continue. And then here you would say norm, right, and then the same thing here, say norm, and you don't need any more of these. I would say once you've marked etc. here, you don't need any more down bow marks, right. And then here, norm, norm, and norm. I like norm because it's it translates into more languages than any other abbreviation. All right, and then then you just have this big sweep, and then here you're taking that same arcing up into your middle and lower winds right in here. Yeah, and pushing your bass clarinets high, which is all fine. Yeah, just really, really nice with the nice high horns in here. Yeah, it just really will create a lot of excitement. All right, now da 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 da. All right, so you're sending up your trombones way up high there. That's really, really cool. It's like not too high to play at all. Up here to C sharp. I would submit to you that you could have, you could have gone really high here if you had wanted to. But I actually kind of like the fact that it's really about power from the middle here rather than reaching up into the stratosphere. And then here you go da 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 or da 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 da. Yeah. Yeah, so like the once again minimum amount of elements for a maximum amount of force. Like like you don't need to fill in the melody too far, too much above when you're using the overtones of of massive trombones right in here. Right, it's just like a really, like all the context we need is right in there. Plus, the roll down here and the tuba and so on. All right, yeah, and then kind of this in here just to do it right. Not that it will make that much of a difference with all this loud stuff happening in here with all the other elements, but it still contributes a little bit. All right, and then we're kind of going into the home stretch here. 6 bars to go. That was like kind of the same thing for me. I think my last 4 to 6 bars kind of had that same sort of pressure, like just like really trying to tie things up and so on. Yeah, and just yeah, these swooping gestures above, and you're continuing on with the basic functions of the piano part, and and then you've set up your trumpets here. Trumpets come home to roost, nice and bright, along with our octave trombones below, which add their overtones, and so on. So once again, you don't need any doubling on the first violin part above. It's just doing everything it needs to do. So all these other parts can just sort of do their fancy frilly things. All right, and then that just sort of is set. You've set it, and you're just going to continue on. This is kind of interesting. The back and forth between very widely spaced pitches in the timpani. I mean, it can, like, what you end up is like a half speed roll on either kettle. So just watch out for that. There's like, I think I should write a tip about that. So like, when you have a roll on a single kettle, it is beautiful and smooth and has this wonderful, beautiful, tasteful kind of a thing to it. The player can build in a kind of a beautiful arc to it, or a almost like an articulation style to the whole space of the roll. But when you're dividing it across two drum heads, like that means that each drum stroke is going to be half as fast as when you have both beaters on the same head. So that has implications. All right. Well, it's not the time or place for me to do a detour into an orchestration tip, but it has a bit more bounce, and it's a bit cruder. So just as long as you're aware of that. And I would actually, I'd be tempted, I'd be tempted to put an accent on the other pitch as well, but what you really need is a slur. Okay, and that means that everything is all put together. The accent really should just be on the first pitch. Right, so boom, boom. All right, and then so did you notice that the least successful part of this entire tutti section was right in here, right? And this sort of reminds me of those pitches at the end of one of the movements of, I think it's the first movement of La Mer, where I think the winds come back and they start doing all this stuff that refers back to something earlier, but the brass is so damn loud nobody can hear it, right? So that's like you've got so much intricate stuff up here. It's the intricacy and the staccato-ness and everything else that's making it difficult to hear, right? And what you hear in the mock-up is what's going to happen in real life. It's just that this is going to feel very kind of scattered and fragmented, and just a pitch here or there will really be audible. But it's worth it because of what you end up doing with it right in here. Right, so I would say don't really change it or anything. Like it all becomes much more audible when the strings are playing along and so on. And then really, of course, with the big push up here to the downbeat of E. So anyways, that's what I have to say about this D section, and I just think it is just a fine piece of orchestration, just gorgeous. Like I said, I think it's even more effective than mine in terms of just a lot of the clarity of the parts and the innovation and the the just the imaginative way. You have so much variety and so much development and progression and evolution of the texture and so on. You didn't just set it and forget it. You really you really explored all the possibilities, I feel, and you probably could have even gotten more. You're probably looking at this and saying, oh geez, now I understand now how even better to connect these two bars to the next bar and then push into E. So, if you feel like fixing that and changing it, do it. But otherwise, I would say, aside from like maybe a missing dynamic here or there, I'll reiterate, this is ready for the stands. It's ready to roll. Now, back to the very beginning. If I would have an overall comment for this, for this like A through C, I would say there are a few times when the harp scoring is a little underpowered, and it's not a question of like leaving the harp out and substituting somebody else. It's just maybe a matter of maybe changing some of the positions of the notes and maybe upping some of the dynamics and so on. But otherwise, it's just so well done. I think that like looking at this right in here, here we like you have a reversal of it's very clever. You have a reversal of the rolls here, of the opening melody, minus the top octave, with the bass clarinet playing the bottom octave part as directly transcribed from the score, and the clarinets playing the harmony part. Okay, so that's fine. You get a sort of a softer, kind of more flute-like sound on top, but still clarinet, right? So it's clarino bass clarinet and Chalumeau throat tones and Chalumeau register A clarinets. That's all fine. Okay, so my big question here is that like I don't feel that you've taken into account the ability of the clarinet timbre, the clarinet tone, to absorb what is beautiful and glowing and radiant about harp harmonics, right? So they just get sucked dry by the sound of clarinets. So it's a similar kind of a sound. So I think you would be better off just playing these harmonics as the notes that they're intended, right? So like B an octave higher, and then these D thirds and so on, and also an octave higher. Just like you'll just get a better sound, and it'll still have a feeling of being robbed of its timbral quality by the clarinets, but not so bad, right? Then like this is just really great the way that this progresses on, and in fact, speaking of progressing, you are progressing the texture here just as needed in my view, looking at the how to approach this score. So we do get emotional contrasts, and it's not just that this is scored really beautifully, da 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 da, and like right in here you have a little bit of an enclosure, just a momentary enclosure or voice crossing of oboe over the flutes here. But it just works. It's momentary. The flute is not in the weakest register here, and then the oboe sort of joins up going forward. So it just works. I would say, like, if you had gone on with an extended passage of this, I would have said you might need to rewrite that, Arne. But like the way that it is now, like just with that one little spot right in there, I think it totally works fine. So, but it's like not so much even this, the tracking of the oboes and the bassoons and the way these octaves are so tastefully done with bass clarinet and clarinet in octaves. The top voice here, the clarinet doubling with the flute in a stronger register, like the upper middle register. It's just not. It's not even so much that it is this. I love this, like the way this sort of brings more and more information, and then gets to you get to the destination of E half a bar earlier than the rest of the instruments. I just feel that is just so well done. Wonderful, wonderful, moody, emotional, dramatic idea, and of course the rolled harp right in here that works perfectly. All right, now continuing on. We've got unison first flute and first oboe, just beautifully scored, with tremolo harmonization below it, quite a ways below it, and like no middle voice right in here, and that's fine. And that gives you room for the harp to do its thing. It's just like everything is really thought of, like a lot of things in here. With that little pizzicato and the double basses continuing on. So this is so cool, like these bustling strings right in here. Arco sul tasto, there'll probably be a little bit of sul tasto anyways, but it's good to, like, and certainly like sul tasto with this sort of furious playing kind of stuff. It really, it has it has a kind of a more bustling kind of a sound, because the strings, like you're playing over a wider span of string. Like you're not playing closer to the bridge where the string is held still so much, but like there's a real response with playing sul tasto with the strings kind of going back and forth. Now here you have a little error in here, one of almost none, and that is, like if you score like this, you mean something completely different from this, right? So it's almost the equivalent of like going to the yeah. I mean, I kind of don't agree with this decision. I think that what you should do is you should have I think you should have a quarter note. This should be a quarter note with a double beam tremolo over it, and then this should go to like a single eighth note with a flag and one tremolo beam on it, right? Just follow the rhythm here. Otherwise, I just think it unnecessarily. I mean, if this is exactly what you intend, then fine. But I mean, I feel that you might have possibly made a mistake here. So that I think it's really, really important for this bustling to follow the same rhythmic durations as the melody part right in there. So maybe rethink this if that's exactly what you mean. All right, and then this little rising line here in the horn, so beautiful and smooth and discreet, with a harp rolling over the top. It's just really, really nicely done. And this, and here you're bringing in a second oboe for ya-da-da-dum, with the first clarinet coming in to bolster the the first flute part, and the horn below, adding like the octave. It's just so nice, just so tasty. And then da 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 dum, and then we have that same an octave with slightly different voicing of the melody, with strings becoming more prominent in here. Like they'll start to absorb everything into them, but you still get a beautiful color. And then bring bring from the harp. This is all really nicely placed. Da 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 dum. Yeah, and then here we're starting to see the patterns really become like more smoothly stated figuration. And everybody wants to do this with their violas. It was nice that you were able to work it in somehow. And then just this stuff going on in here. It just really works so beautifully. Right, and here you're going to an enclosure with a harmonic part in the middle, and so on. Just just such nice, beautiful choices. Yeah, yeah, and so it's just wonderful. Like in that other place, just wonderful tone painting, right? And like variation of function constantly, just constantly trying to find a way of connecting what happened before to a smooth change in the overall approach. And I just love the variation of dynamics as well. Forte dolce, diminuendo to piano, along with the horns, then crescendo to mezzo forte, just not quite as strong, and then diminuendo again, and then finally going down to pianissimo. Now here I'm seeing the difference here, glissando and portamento. There really isn't kind of room. There isn't quite enough space to go da da or da. So here you're going da. So yeah, I can see the difference there between the glissando and the portamento. That's fine. Um, yeah, the players will probably sneak in a change of bow direction right in here. If they go along with what you've scored here, but they might not. All right, and you could just put one, like no harpist is going to finesse the slurs that you've got in here. They are just going to want the big piano style slur that they had before. Yeah, and this is just lovely, little bits and pieces adding as they go upwards, and then here the wind's taking over and dovetailing upwards. Yeah, that's all just really done really beautifully. And then here, like this big surge, very romantic rather than impressionistic, with the cesura and a little bit of sort of da 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 da. And then here, like you're bringing in some pitches that kind of give a certain harmonic context that I've warned against, but I'll give you a pass on it because the pitches are coming in as a consequence of the direction in which the harmony, or sorry, the inherent harmony is going from the wandering, right? So it's like the wandering is leading in a certain place. So you're allowing, it's not so much that you're setting a pitch from the beginning to which the wandering will have to abide by. It's more that you are adding elements of harmonization as the line goes forward. So those I'm totally on board with, right? Although this might be a little much. But even so, even at all that, I just like my wandering line. I prefer this without any kind of help, right? But it's still like the way that you've scored it is beautiful. It really reminds me a lot of Ravel, just like the way he would add on to a simple line like that, just a little bit of harmonic context going forward and so on, leading to something that was more richly harmonized. Okay, so here we get to a place where the harp right here will just be completely invisible. And part of it is because of the pizzicato that you've got here, right? In the first place, pizzicato will absorb the sound of the harp, right? So that's strike one. Strike two, low clarinets and horn will absorb the sound of the harp too. So there's like nothing left to do here but to boost up your harp dynamic, and the sound of the timpani will absorb the sound of the harp. It's almost to the point where like you would be better off with the harp, if you could have like this played by you've got this covered by your double basses, and you could cover this with your timpani, right? Yeah, but I mean I like the idea though. So like I would say leave the harp in, mark it up to mezzo forte. Okay, and then I think you've got some chance of this. I like these offbeats. That's really cool. Yeah, and then going to stopped horns right in here. Here's where the character of the passage I describe as calm surface over restless undercurrent. So you've got the restless undercurrent going, just beautifully scored, I would say, And then you're going to like the calm surface here clarinet family and bassoon plus horns, right? And that has just a really wonderful, rich sound. But I like the fact that you're not satisfied to just sit on that, right? And violas. You don't want to just do that. You want to increase the explore the roles, right? So you let go of the horns here in pianissimo, right? And then we're bringing in more of a presence here for these winds, right? And then these little flurries here in the upper strings with the stopped horns, as I mentioned before. Yeah, and then then here is like where the harp starts to come out of out from being buried, and it works beautifully. It's incredibly effective here. Okay. Yeah, and the little da da dum da da dum stuff happening in the trumpets. The wonderful anticipation that you build up here. It's it's just absolutely And then this is such an easy thing to do. This looks insane, but it's really just a grace note on the lower open strings, and then the open A with a D stuck on top of it. So it's just real easy, and then to go from there to the D sharp, so nicely done. Yeah. Yeah, and I really love the way the trombones work with the bassoons right in here. And then you've got you've got this big pizzicato stuff happening here. Now this might seem like really difficult, but it's actually just open strings above with a fingered D on the bottom, and then here, once again, open strings like a open G fifth at the bottom of the triple stop. With the fingered B above, right? Yeah. So this, yeah. I like the pizzicato stuff happening in here. It's very cool. I mean, it's better. What's happening here is much more interesting than the harp. And then here you've got these little glissandos, right? And then this beautifully caps off the end of the passage with the upper winds above. So yeah, so I feel it's just very strongly orchestrated here and everywhere else. So yeah, you've orchestrated this score. You have graciously contributed to Patreon right at a time when I was raising funds for Ukrainian musicians. And as you might see in a post today, we got officially thanked by the Lisa Batiashvili Foundation in a Christmas card, which is very nice of them. And you've heard my evaluation and everything else. So what's the next step with this? You just maybe put it on a shelf and forget about it. Just let it stand on the channel, and as a sort of example of the kinds of things you can do. It's almost like a calling card or a or a like show reel or something like that. Very, very beautifully orchestrated and competent. The craft, the imagination, it's just all first rate. If I were to shortlist the amount of pieces that are ready to go onto the stands, that like if a conductor asked me, like, quick, name 6 of these scores that are ready to go for the orchestra, this would definitely be on that list. Okay. So, look, I mean, if there are any little errors that I pointed out or things that you might want to reconsider or alternate ways of looking at things or stuff that you just noticed yourself by looking at it that I didn't say anything about, make those fixes now. Talk to a conductor. Talk to somebody like maybe management at an orchestra. If you know anybody, get it performed. And that's all I've got to say about this, except for, once again, thanks to you, Arne, for contributing, for being just an awesome supporter on Patreon, and, for dropping in on the community, making what I feel to be sort of wise, helpful comments and, constructive feedback for people on their entries from time to time. And just for being there, along with all my other Patreon supporters, website subscribers, viewers. You guys are amazing. And, like the fact that I could put out a call and get so many scores out, just like it really is incredible. But I'll tell you what, one thing that is even more incredible, that this is the official 100th video that I have made for this series of orchestration challenge videos. So it's not the 100th evaluation, but it is the 100th video, like including everything, announcements, my orchestration lesson, and other things. But but it is like the 150. No, sorry, 148th score, I think, in out of the entire stack. So yeah, so we are making it through this. We're gonna make it to Christmas with all of these videos in the can, and a full playlist for anybody to watch over the holidays and enjoy. And with that, I'm going to take a lunch break and then come back to this. And there are definitely going to be 3 videos to watch today and 3 more tomorrow, and that'll be the end of the series. Sadly, sniff, sniff. So yeah, thanks everybody for coming along for the ride, and I'll see you soon.